Check, check, check. Check, check.
Thank you guys for being here today for our work session. Today is September the 14th, 2021. It's approximately 6 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started today. I'm going to go ahead and officially call this meeting to order tonight. I'm going to do the prayer tonight, and I'm going to ask if Commissioner Edwards would do our pledge. Father, thank you for today, God. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you for your grace and your mercy, Lord. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of this discussion tonight, God. We ask if you would to lead and guide us, God. Lord, I want to include tonight Commissioner Henderson's son, John, God. We pray and we thank you for touching his body, God. Also, Mr. Buck tonight also, Lord, we thank you for touching his body as well, God. Lord, open our minds and give us understanding tonight as we talk about the county business. Lord, we pray for a special blessing over this county. Every citizen that live here, we thank you for them right now. In your son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you. Again, we want to thank all of you for being here tonight. Miss Judy, okay. You want to come on up? Tonight, our discussion is on the future residential development and current moratorium. We're going to kick it off. If you want to open up for us, Miss Judy, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you so much for us being able to get together for this work session this evening. As we may need future work sessions to kind of hash out a handful of items, tonight what I'm seeking directly from you is I need to know what kind of lot size are y'all looking for? What kind of development right now are you looking for? So the first one is, and I did print in case the your computer screens didn't show, and I know it's a little hard sometimes to have eyes in the back of your head, but the framework. So the first questions we have is, how did we get here and where are we going? Well, it all started in 1971 when the Newton County Board of Commissioners adopted a zoning code and a zoning map. As you can see here, this is our official 1971 zoning map. And I took this particular location, which most of us are familiar with. It's at the Brown Bridge and Kirkland and Jack Neely Road. So as you can see, in 1971, there was very little lots that were developed there. Most of it was zoned agricultural. And then, as time passes, changes happen. So then in 1990, this is how we kept our zoning maps before we went digital. We all hand wrote them in. So that little area that's circled with the red dot, that's the same area you were just looking at in that 71, but do you see how many more residential subdivisions are in that area in 1990? So, and then that was a two-part. We have the north side of the map, and then we have the south side of the map. And those are both the 1990 zoning maps. Then when we get to today, If you look today, obviously there has been a lot more development in this area and all over the county, but this was a real good one to kind of explain. So, on top of that, in this particular area and surrounding areas, the county went back in 2010 and then as well in 2013, and we put overlays in. And so you had what was allowed in 1971 for development. Then you had zoning changes that came through in 1990 for more development. And then we have development, and we've put in place some overlays that potentially allow for a lot more density than just the single-family lots that we're used to. So,
Ms. Judy,
yes, sir.
can you talk about the definition of an overlay,
Oh, yes, sir.
please?
So the zoning, the overlays so you have your base layer of zoning, and that is what your residential lot is zoned or what your commercial, that's a base zoning. And so in the ordinance, the Board of Commissioners sought to add additional layers on top of that. So they adopted this overlay. They did an outline map. They did extensive meetings with people in those areas who own these properties or who could be affected by it. And they decided that, the board decided that the overlay would, while it allows for 3 residential single-family lots per acre, it also allows for mixed use by right, and we'll talk about that a little more in a few minutes. It also allows for more commercial growth. But the trade for that, you can have more density, you can get more development, but the trade is you have to develop the aesthetics. You cannot use regular vinyl siding for your home. You have to build with some type of either cement siding board or brick or stucco, those things that enhance the quality or the perceived quality of a home. So we established the Alman overlay, I believe, was 2010, and then the Salem overlay came in 2013. Now, mind you, during all that time, nobody was building. When the market crashed in 2008, I think in 2011, I think they issued 9 residential building permits for the whole year. So nothing was really going on. And at that time, it's when they decided to put the overlays in. Well, development really didn't kick back up until about 2014. And when it came back, as you guys are aware now, then we started applying these codes. Well, codes look great written on paper, but when you get ready to start applying the codes is when you realize where you don't have enough fingers to plug the dam. You know, you've got all of these things that are happening, and one of the things that happened is you can already get a lot size of 14,200 square feet, which is a third of an acre. You can get that lot size, but we didn't prohibit a developer, and mind you, developers are great people, but developers are there to take the amount of land, and I call it squeeze the land for as much development as they can get. That's how they make their money. So we didn't have anything that prevented a developer from taking advantage of what's called a conservation subdivision. So let's say you've got some floodplain in your subdivision and you can't build there, but you have 20 acres and 10 acres is in a floodplain. You can't build in the floodplain or the wetlands. So they want to take and put all the density in the 10 acres they can. So it shrunk the lots from 14,000 square feet down to 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. They didn't necessarily get more houses, but they packed them in a very small area. So this is definitely one thing as we move forward. if the end decision on the board is we would still allow 3 houses per acre in some areas, we don't want those loopholes to allow someone to squeeze in a lot more density and bank that unusable land. So where we are and where we're headed. The future land use map and the full comprehensive plan is due by June 30th, 2023. This is our planning tool to show where we expect development to happen, and it will guide what type of development may happen. And the next few pages are our current future land use map. And as you can see, we've got them in sections, so if you'll look at the corner of your page right down here, that shows you approximately, if the whole county was in that center, map 1 is the top northwestern part of the county, and then map 2 is the top eastern side of the county, and it also gives you a little code guide. And that code guide says everywhere where you're seeing these light yellow colors or light green colors, that's where we expect residential development to go. And so as you can see, as you go through each of those pages, we've planned our future land use to have a lot of residential development. Also, the light pink areas are what we call a development node. And a development node says those are areas the county has identified that is hot for development. That's where everybody's wanting to be. And as we learned through an exercise, and I had the pleasure of sitting on with Commissioner Mason, one of the things that I've learned about commercial development is if you want to get a Publix, they're looking to have X amount of rooftops within a certain area, or they're not looking to develop. Not that if they built one in an additional area, they couldn't make their money, but that's their business model. They're out looking for these. They want at least, I think, when we were going through a plan that was presented a few years ago, someone was talking about, we want a Wild Wings down here. Well, a Wild Wings, if I remember correctly, is looking for at least 80,000 rooftops within a 5-mile radius. That's a lot of rooftops. So Wild Wings may not choose to build here if they don't have the numbers that they're looking for. But anyway, the pink for development, we have said these are areas, and up here in this particular map, which is the third map, the pink areas are identified as our overlays right now. Now, there's other areas that are development nodes as well, but currently we look at our overlays as where we think prime development will go. Some of the reasons we think prime development will go there is you have sewer capacity, you have county water, you have enough school systems within that area that can service, you have enough fire departments within that area that could service the housing, you have some road network, and we're going to get into that because I think that's where we're at today. I think we're at growing pains of the existing development that started at 70, or even before 71, but we started accounting for it in 71, came up to 1990. We had a lot of subdivisions develop, and these subdivisions, you go down Brown Bridge Road, and these subdivisions have, some of them might have a decel lane where you can get off the road to turn in, but I don't know of any except the new Streamwood that was put in that has a left turn lane. So that means when traffic is trying to go down this 2-lane road, if somebody's trying to turn across traffic left, they're backing up traffic for however long. If you don't have a deceleration lane or an acceleration lane, those little lanes when you come out of your subdivision that kind of helps get your car guided in the right direction so you can kind of scoot on into traffic. If you don't have those, then you're also blocking traffic because you've got to get where you can turn. Now, that's talking about just getting into the subdivision. We're not talking about trying to get out of a subdivision. Trying to get out of a subdivision is even harder because we all recognize school starts at a certain time or we have to be at work at a certain time. So all of us come funneling out of our subdivisions all around between 7 to 8 every morning. And so everybody, not everybody, but there will be constituents that will complain, it takes me 10 minutes to get out of my subdivision. Well, that might not be a regular Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, but it could easily be any work day or school day at 8 o'clock in the morning. So now we have subdivisions that met regulations at the time they were built. And remember, most of these subdivisions, you turn into the subdivision, and it might have another entrance, but most of them you're going to go one road straight up into the subdivision. You've got some little cul-de-sacs that come out, but it doesn't connect to anywhere else. So every subdivision on Brown Bridge Road has no way to escape to another road. They've got to funnel back into Brown Bridge Road. So I was talking with our transportation director, and I think, again, if memory serves me, it's somewhere in the cost of $17 million to do from one end of Brown Bridge Road to the other end of Brown Bridge Road to widen it enough. We would have to acquire property. We would have to then, you have to engineer it, acquire the property, and then facilitate it. And yes, sir, do you know that price?
Yeah, that's just the cost between Crowell Road and Salem to do a 3-lane section for that one section, 17 million.
And that's a 3-lane, not a 4-lane.
Yes and no, that's a 3-lane. That's just a 3-lane.
Okay, so we get less for our money, but as you can imagine, the county can't pick and choose which subdivision gets the left turn lane or which subdivision gets a decel lane. So we have recognized that, and now new subdivisions have to put in these kind of measures. They have to have a deceleration lane. If it's over 75 lots, they have to have a left turn lane. Now, of course, there's variances and so forth, but our regulations, and if we stay firm to our regulations, this helps, but we're only helping in spots. So mind you, if you get a left turn lane, so now all of a sudden the road goes out, but it might shift because you only got the right-of-way on the side you're developing. You didn't acquire right-of-way on the other side, so the road begins to shift back and forth. So there's lots of things that happen, but we recognize on the west side of our county specifically, we have subdivisions that were built so many years ago where they weren't required to put in road improvements that are necessary today. And at the time when we were at 50,000 people, it may not have been necessary. I do realize that our new numbers came back, and I would have to just perception-wise believe that those numbers are low for what I believe we currently have. And I also think those that we are rapidly adding more homes, which are adding more households and more people. But our numbers are what our numbers are, and I think it was what, 112 or 117 is where they, 112, okay. Again, I would venture to say I think we have more than that, but that's the data we have to work with right now. So at 50,000 people, we didn't have as much traffic needs. At 112,000 people, plus all the businesses we brought in and all the tourism that goes on and things like that, we have greater needs now. So the goal would be for us to find ways to, when we do our comprehensive plan, and remember, that's our plan for the future. That's how we say we expect this county to grow. When we do our comprehensive plan, part of that is looking at your road network and where does improvements need to be made, and how can you get interconnectivity to these other subdivisions that may already be built out. Some we might be able to get. We have a development that's going over at the Kroger on Salem Road, and that particular development is actually going to have 5 entrances, which means there are 3 subdivisions that will be able to connect. One of the subdivisions, I believe, is Wisteria on Brown Bridge Road. So now, those people, instead of coming out Brown Bridge Road and coming up Salem, if they wanted to go to Kroger, they could go back through their neighborhood, through this new neighborhood, and be at Kroger without having to get out on the main roads. So now you understand that connectivity is very important, but when you're trying to connect things that are developed at all different times and different stages, people don't necessarily plan for what might be needed in the future. Again, what does the developer want to do? They want to get the most bang for their buck. They want to squeeze the density. They want to squeeze the land. So that's where our ordinances and so forth come in. So again, back to the question, where are we today and where are we headed? In Tier 1, and I've probably covered some of this, but I think it's important just to hit my points. In Tier 1 of the Alman and Salem overlay, residential development may happen at a density of 3 houses per acre, or approximately 14,520 square feet per lot. There is also the allowance to do the open space conservation residential overlay, which could reduce the lot size by a half, or a little greater actually, but approximately a half. Again, staff proposes that we take this allowance out and not allow, if we continue with the densities in Salem and Alman, we do not want to further allow greater densities or smaller lots where it just doesn't benefit the homeowner or it doesn't benefit the community. Tier 2 and 3 are designed to attract non-residential development, but this is also allowed for mixed use. Most projects we have seen as mixed use, that developer wants 70% residential because that's where their money is usually at, and then they'll do the 30% non-residential, which is either commercial or civic. But under the mixed use category, a residential development can do multifamily by right, and that multifamily could be as great as 10 to 20 units an acre, and that is a lot of rooftops in a small amount of area. So again, this is a picture of our Salem and Alman overlays. The next photo is not as fancy a map. I apologize, but I couldn't find the brick store, so this is from our Q Public, but it does show where the brick store overlay is. So we're more than just overlays. The next handful of slides, and I promise as soon as I get through this part, I'm going to open it up for discussion, but I kind of wanted to give a big overview so then we could start talking about the meat of it. So what you have is you're going to have every zoning district, and that's what's shown here. Right now you can see those areas on the first map that are in dark green. Those are agricultural. Some of those are still farms that are used in our southern and eastern area, and even some down in our west, southwest corner, we have some farms that are down there as well. But these are lots that are required to be at least 10 acres in size, unless they request a rezoning. So what they could develop by right is they could not get any lot smaller than 10 acres in this residential district. The next little map is what we call our rural estates, and you've got to squeeze really hard to look at those. That has been a real underused category. It was supposed to kind of bridge the size of the agricultural until you got to the agricultural residential, and staff would propose for any RE lots that maybe we'd look at making those 5 acres. instead of I think now they're allowed to be a 2-acre lot. But if we really want to do a step in between, or we eliminate this category altogether, and you either are agricultural at 10 acres or your AR at whatever acre size that we set. Again, there's only 3 or 4 of these properties, so it's not like it is a big effect on a mass amount of land. The next ones are, and this is where all our residential development happens right here. In AR, agricultural residential, the minimum lot size right now is 1 acre. Except if you're in a protected watershed, which is the Alcove, where's my watershed map? Alcove, the Little River, Bear Creek, thank you, Shana, come on. Cornish Creek, I knew I have my backup here. And what's the one that's up north there in District 3? Is that, it may be Cornish Creek. So every commissioner district has some areas that are under these 2-acre minimums. City Pond is one in District 4. I don't want to spin wheels on trying to remember all of these districts, but in AR, you're either 1 acre if you're in the Yellow River and South River, and you're a 2-acre if you're in one of the other watersheds that is for drinking water or more protected. It's not a recreational body of water. The other map that you have that's on the right-hand side of the page, this is our R1, R2, and R3. Now, staff proposes we condense all of these into one category. There is not enough differences between R1 to R3 for there to be, we require the same setbacks, we require almost the same lot sizes. One of them is, if you're on a septic tank, you have to have at least a little better than half an acre, which is 25,500 square feet. So I think if we said if you're in an area with sewer, it's 22,000. That's, I mean, we're really at this point, we're splitting hairs if you want to know the truth. So I would propose that we condense all of these into one type of residential zoning district, and all of those regulations be exactly the same across the board for it. There's only tiny differences that really, kind of like the RE, it just doesn't make sense as to why we would have said R1 here and R3 here. They're triplets, they're not identical triplets, but they all were born at the same time. So then the next, which I think is important in our discussion here, and it's going to be, you're going to have to squeeze your eyes to see the DR. We have very little, which is called like the duplexes, the dual residential. And some of those is over at where Kirkland and Salem Road meet. There's some older duplexes there known as Plum Orchard. We have a little bit of property off of the bypass down here near the city of Porterdale that was never developed with duplexes, but we have very little. And the map adjacent to it on the right-hand side is where your base zoning, remember this is our base, not what the overlays allow, but our base. Those are the only areas where we allow multifamily by right. So unless a petition was brought back in front of this board for some area right now outside of the overlays, you are not looking at a lot of land that's currently zoned to allow for townhomes or apartments. We're not looking at that. That's not what we're faced with. We are faced with that in our overlays, which we'll discuss. It's very important. But the one property that's over off of the access road, right behind the New Ginn Automotive, That had been on the books since the late 80s, and it's just now finally developing out. But again, and the ones that you see that are over here off of Salem Road, those are already the existing 2 apartment complexes that we have. There's one off the Martin Luther King where it turns into the bypass. There's an apartment complex near Johnny's Pizza. I hope y'all know these landmarks. But there's an apartment complex there that is in the city as well. I mean, not in the city, in the county, right outside of the city's jurisdiction. So right now, really it's our R1, R2, and R3, those zoning districts and our overlays that are really causing us the most problems with development and not the development necessarily itself, but the impact it's having on all of the other existing development around it. So does anybody have any questions on zoning districts? I promise it looks like a thick packet, but most of them are pictures, so it won't take me long to get through it. But do you have any questions right now on those base zoning districts?
Any question, guys? Commissioner Mason?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I actually wrote my questions down on my pages, so I gotta go back. One question that I had, we talked about the Salem overlay and the Almond overlay. What process do we go through if there are any current businesses that doesn't look as if they are abiding by that overlay?
Overlay?
Yes.
So all ordinances are written with what's called legal non-conforming. So if a building built in 2010, before the overlay was adopted, or let's say we're gonna go a little further back. We had a business that's been there, and it was a metal building, and it's been there since the 90s. And now we've adopted an overlay. So in the overlay itself, we can require them to bring it up if they are doing more than 25% of the outside facade. You may remember we did this, the McDonald's at Crowell Road and the Interstate. A few years ago, they came in with a plan and wanted to remodel that McDonald's. Well, because that was 25%, more than 25% of the building, we had that entire building it was already blocked, so it met a materials. But they painted that entire building to match. They updated all of their signage. They did a lot of things that brought it to the overlay requirements. So it really is important for us to capture when we can make someone, but if a business was there and it's in business and they don't propose any changes and it's not dilapidated, we can move forward in code enforcement if it's dilapidated. But if it's structurally sound and they never chose to change it, it could theoretically stay that way throughout its lifetime of being there. But any changes proposed to existing buildings, if it meets a certain threshold, they would have to do some redevelopment.
So basically, if the business was there prior to putting the overlay in place, as long as it's a sound structure, we allow it to remain unless they decide they want to do more than 25% of restructuring to that building. At that point, then we will go back and have them to abide by that overlay that's in place.
Yes, sir. Or if they want to change the use and it requires it to come in for a conditional use, like we've had a couple of car lots that have wanted to go in the overlay, and part of those requirements, one never went forward and built, but part of those requirements was they had to do the front facade. Now, we did not make them do the entire, but the front facade, what's facing the road, they had to put in sidewalks. You know, there was a lot of things that they would have to do to redevelop the property. But we're limited in what we can, what's the trigger that can require somebody to make substantial changes.
Okay, and then my second and last question, do we ever have developers that are willing to take on the expense of infrastructure like water and sewer? So in areas where there is no water and sewer, there is no infrastructure, do we ever have developers that are willing to come in and invest in that infrastructure so that they can develop in that specific area throughout Newton County?
Well, I'm cautioning myself on how I say this. So we have in our regulations currently, if you're within, is it 1,000 feet for water, Shayna? If you're within 1,000 feet of county water, you are required to pull the water. Now, mind you, these are not just your classic subdivisions you're thinking about. This is even if someone had 50 acres that all fronted a road and they wanted to develop it into however many lots, and it wasn't for family. Families are exempt from our regulations of having to further extend utilities. But even, I think we had one over off of, not Butler Bridge Road, but what's the, near Wehunt there, Old Cover Bridge Road. We had someone who was putting in a development there, and we also had a development that's called the Farms at Princeton up off of Mount Zion and Dial Mill, and Gum Creek area. They had to extend and put a fire hydrant, and if they had more than a certain amount of road frontage, they would had to have pulled more fire hydrants and extend county water. There's also a requirement, I think it's 1,500 feet, for a developer, if you're within 1,500 feet of sewer, you must pull the sewer. And that is actually how our west side over the years kind of grew. Our west side, anything that kind of bubbles around your main city of Covington, is that people would tap into this and pull it down and tap in and pull it down. And the advantage that a developer has, if it's on sewer, is that generally they can get more lots. Now, someone's probably not gonna pull it 10,000 feet because the expense, unless what they wanted to do was gonna benefit them, that expense would probably be too great to require them to pull it. So while I'm sure there are plenty of developers willing to go the extra mile, I have found that that is usually in trade for what benefits them the most. And we found years ago that it was best to have requirements in the ordinance to further specifically the water. Now, sewer is great, but if you have development that doesn't have county water and you don't have fire hydrants and you're building houses and it's just their insurance rates are out the roof. So again, there is a requirement. We hope we will have more developers that are bringing more to the table, but right now it seems to be, if I can get this, I'll bring this. Mm-hmm. Not, I'll bring this if I can get this.
Right.
That's just as open as I can be with y'all. Yes.
That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanders.
Had to pray over that.
That's right.
My question is, Judy, is about the acreage, the amount of homes that are on a lot. As you know, in District 3, it seems like it's about 12 homes on an acre. Mm-hmm. So that is my huge concern because the homes are so small on the west side. They're so close together, but when you go in other parts of the district, they're separated apart. So how can we legally, and that can probably be to the county attorney, what can we do to change that so that, because I get that complaint from a lot of the neighbors in the area of District 3 is that the homes are just so close together, like they're just packing them in there like cattle.
Yes, ma'am. We do that by changing what we allow as that minimum lot size. This board has the right to look at any zoning district and set what requirement that you feel is best. And I do agree. I live in the city of Porterdale in one of the historic homes that I redid, and I own a whole .19 of an acre. And when I walk out my door, I can stick out my hand and touch my neighbor. I can hear everything that's going on inside their house. The other disadvantage, and again, when you go to these planning, the AICP meetings and the American Planning Association and the Georgia Planning Association, a lot of planners are geared to develop, and they want, that's just how they're trained. And they want us not to just look at putting one house, but you should be able to do a little sublet house in the back, and that's how planners are trained. It doesn't fit every area, and those classic planning techniques fit better into cities than they do into the more the unincorporated area or the more rural areas. So we do have to consider the fair housing. We do have to consider that someone could come forward with some type of senior housing or something protected under the ADA. We have to consider all of those, but those are special considerations. That's not every development that we do. So that is, as we go through, I have a couple of proposals for y'all to consider on what you might want to do over the next year and a half to 2 years, specifically while we are updating our comprehensive plan. Because right now, we're kind of all over the board and stuff is happening, and we're trying to stuff it back down here, and we're trying to open it up here, and we just have a lot going on. And that if we can get our comp plan, go through all the exercises, and see how where our development has happened and how we envision it moving forward, I think we have a lot better chance of keeping the small town charm of what is considered Newton. People I hear all the time, a gentleman mentioned he moved into Westminster because he wanted to be in the country. Well, you know, that's in our overlay, and those are small lots. But for him, where he was coming from, that offered him a much more relaxed living. So I think that our citizens have been very vocal during our strategic planning, and even more now in a lot of commissioner meetings, saying, we moved out here for certain things, and how can y'all help us keep those certain things that we moved out here for, which is that little more laid back. You can get up on Sunday and drive down 278, and you might pass a handful of cars. You're not like in the Autobahn up in Lawrenceville or up in Loganville, you know, where you're neck-to-neck traffic. But moving on, because I know your time's important, as well as everyone's time this evening.
Judy, but before you move on, let me ask
Yes,
you a
sir.
question. But to make that happen, what Commissioner Sanders is speaking on, we had to make some changes to the overlay, is that correct?
Yes, we
Okay.
would have to make some changes to both the overlays and the base zoning, because
Okay.
if we go back to those maps, the overlays cover our, like, Kroll Road and Almond Road and access, and the Salem goes down Salem Road. But there's a lot of areas on the fringe that still have sewer, water, already a zoning that would allow them to get about 2 houses an acre. So we need, yes, sir, we need the overlays, but we're also gonna have to consider some of our other districts. So Shayna was so kind to work really hard this past couple of weeks
We
to
got-
get with our.
We got
Yes,
two
sir.
more. We got,
I apologize.
Attorney Megan, then we got Commissioner Henderson.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for all that hard work that you do. It sometimes it seems like it goes unappreciated, but I do. What about these new proposed subdivisions we're hearing about? How some of the peoples in Newton County who own large tracts of land, et cetera, and stuff, who have asked for like the local governments to build a subdivision. It's, I think, close around or in the overlay. So how would that affect their property? Would they get less houses or so could you give me a little bit on that if you could?
Yes, sir. We currently have one last subdivision that had been in the works and having heavy discussions and had already started drafting plans. That was before the moratorium. One more, and that happens to be the Dobbs property. That is where the old homestead was off of Harold Dobbs Road. And they are proposing a overlay tier change with a civic component that, and I do need to get with you, Commissioner Sanders, in reference to some updates on that. But that is the very last subdivision or property where we had hard conversations and people had invested money in coming up with these layouts and designs. So any other property that's currently sitting right now, while they have no vested right to be able to take 20 acres and turn it into 60 houses. There's no vested right because there's nothing that has been formally presented. So if someone else desired in that area or in any area of the overlay and this board decided to change that lot size or continue some type of moratorium while we complete our comp plan, they just have to be patient. They've sat on the land this long and they haven't chosen to move forward with the development prior to the county recognizing that we needed to make some real meat changes. So no one's vested there. It's just a hope that they could do something. Does that give you a good explanation? Okay.
Thank you. I got,
Thank you, Ms. Judy.
Our annual review of Municode each year starts November 1st, where we work through the code, make sure all the updated things that we've done during the year are then codified for the next year. So that's another thing for the board to think of about these changes, that once we get these ready, they put them up, and then we've got a year unless we choose to pay them to do it outside of our normal terms. So, and it could be very expensive when you're working, because we literally go from the table of contents to the end, just to make sure that we're good. So if we're gonna have significant, we good?
Yeah, he's trying to find his phone, I'm sure, to get it turned on
But that's something to
silent.
think about timing-wise too, that'll be something that we need to think about so that we can be the most cost-conscious.
Right, so the possibility of getting all these changes in place by this November 1st is probably not realistic. I'm certainly willing to do as many work sessions, and we can do some by Zoom, and I do think that would be important so we can have our Planning Commission and our Board of Zoning Appeals so you can hear some of the things that they hear all the time that might be best to look at the code. And also to have another layer. You guys are obviously the legislating board, but you have a lot of different jobs, not just the zoning portion. And you have appointed members that are very engaged on these boards that could potentially give you a lot of having a roundtable discussion with them, maybe doing it at Turner Lake or again on a Zoom. We do have the ability, if we do a Zoom meeting, that Shayna can control where it is just the people that are able to speak. It wouldn't be like outburst from people being able to turn off a microphone or getting distracted by the chat that was going on. You know, work sessions are for us to kind of hash out what is it that you need and what are the problems that you have.
So I got Commissioner Mason, but let me ask you one question before we get there. To make
Yes.
sure so if we wanted to, I want to make sure we stay legal. If we wanted to extend the moratorium again, we can. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and I have a little further information. I was able to speak with Mr. Paul Fricky with Gerard and Davis, and he is their top land use attorney. He is the gentleman who's guided us through quite a bit, and I was able to get some very new information that I didn't. I posed a question to him, and he suggested how we might solve it. But I don't want to get too far ahead, because
Okay.
if I do, then I'm going to just be
Okay.
repeating myself.
Okay, Commissioner Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question, and this is a community, citizen question. The community has a concern about existing lots where builders developed years ago, but never, I guess, really built it out completely. Now, I guess you may have new builders that are coming back wanting to build a larger subdivision. And now the complexity of the community has changed and no longer can support the size of the subdivision as planned with the appropriate infrastructure, schools, and law enforcement. What are we doing to kind of help address that concern when now these subdivisions are coming back and they're larger now? How are we able to really address those infrastructure, schools, law enforcement concerns? Because I think that's what a lot of the citizens are talking about now.
Okay, and that's a great question. So we have different layers of development of a subdivision. Some of our subdivisions might have one or two houses and the rest of the houses weren't built out. So a builder, it's not a developer at that point. So now these are on the tax record buildable lots. So a builder gets to go in and pull a permit if they have everything that they need. Now that's if it's already had a final plat and broke out into all of these little bitty lots. Now, some of our subdivisions have second phases or a third phase it's just raw ground, or maybe they put some road in but they never finished it. So those, if the preliminary plat had one portion of the subdivision, and this is in our development regulations, if a developer had an approved preliminary plat and got at least one phase approved and finalized, then he has a vested right to develop the rest of that subdivision. Now, the new part of the subdivision has to have storm detention, it has to have whatever our requirements would be, but some of the things that might not be right now is it didn't have a left turn lane. So now are we able to go back, and I will explore that because I do believe there's a possibility to get it. We just don't have it in our regs right now. But they can finish that subdivision because they vested it once they completed that first section or the first two sections or so forth and so on. Now, the one thing that could prevent that from happening is if you had one way in and you had 200 lots and only 100 lots was developed and we're looking at putting 100 more, the fire code could say, it wouldn't be zoning, but the fire code could say, unless you can provide us another means for safety, then the fire wouldn't sign off, therefore the plat stays. Now again, everybody can challenge, and it might be something that we have to negotiate numbers or something, but there is ways to prevent what would be a life safety issue in the future. And we have a list of the subdivisions, another project Shayna's worked on for me. We have a list of the current subdivisions that have these other phases, and we will be getting that information to you. We also have a list of 26 subdivisions that were planned back in the day, one of them being one that I believe it's in District 1, Jacks Creek. Jacks Creek is a subdivision where the first phase they went in and they put in all the road network, they put in the detention ponds, they extended water lines, they had perk tests for their septic tanks, which now it's not perk test, but back in the day it was. They had everything ready for a final plat, but then the market crashed and they never did the final plat. They also had a second phase. I think there's 39 lots or so in that first phase. They also had a second phase that would have put them over the number for a single entrance, number one, okay? So it had a preliminary plat, they had a land disturbance permit, but no part of that subdivision became a final plat. So now they're back at step one. But for the board to prevent being challenged in the future, there was actually a very substantial investment to put the road in, to run the water lines, there may be power down in it, and to have all of these taps put in, there's an investment. So we have a list of 26 subdivisions that were in some stage of development, or maybe they just got approved and never even turned a blade of dirt. On those, I would say it was a nice thought, but we may not want to allow that. But for something such as Jacks Creek that was almost finalized, I think that it would behoove the board to weigh the options there as to whether or not to let that first phase go ahead and develop, because there is vested rights there because there was money spent. Does that make sense to everyone?
So do we know about how many preliminary plats are out there now that were started prior to the moratorium this year? Do we know about, on average, about
Shana,
how many?
How many active preliminaries that are under LDPs, approximately? Yeah, we don't have a lot of brand new developments that came in. We could certainly pull what's up. I will say right now, because the building and developing is a hot item right now, when people get approved, they're pretty much getting right on it and getting it. I will say Westfield is definitely one of those subdivisions.
Westminster?
No, Westfield.
Oh, I don't know.
Westminster has the second phase,
Right.
but Westfield is going to be up on Salem Road behind the Kroger.
Okay.
And that development is going to have the large houses, then some smaller cottage-style lots and houses, and then a handful of townhomes, and then it has 30% of its land, some already developed for commercial, but then looking for other commercial development there. So that one, you should start seeing, we've got 2 model home permits, I know, in that subdivision right now going up.
So when do we, one last question. When did we actually start? Because I do know that there is one subdivision where they, in District 2 off of Brown Bridge Road.
Crescent Place? No, you're Bailey Glen.
That's correct, Bailey Glen.
Bailey Glen.
Where they started out, it was, I think it was maybe like 20, 30 homes or so. We talked about it in 2019. When the new builder came before us and they wanted to put the garage on the front versus on the side.
Right,
They
right.
did promise me that the homes would look exactly or very, very similar. I don't think they do, but neither here nor there.
There was 11 homes totaled when they
Okay.
began in that subdivision, and I agree,
Yeah.
the new style of houses,
Right.
new
It-
color palettes, new materials, but they also meet the overlay where some of the existing homes probably didn't meet not all meet, because I
Right.
think they had vinyl siding and maybe bricking on the front.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And
But
then
nice
there's-
homes,
yes,
substantial homes,
right.
yes.
But then there's townhomes in the back that I don't ever recall us having a conversation.
That was part of their preliminary, that was part of already, their first phase. They just weren't built. On Skipjack, there's only one road on Skipjack, and that's the
correct.
only townhomes that will be part of
is.
it. There's a second phase of this that they're raw dirt. They haven't put anything in. But there's another phase, and it will eventually, they're looking to connect it with Crescent Place, which is over off of Salem Road.
Okay.
So Crescent Place is another subdivision like Jack's Creek. It was right up to the end. There's X amount of lots in there, all the roads in there. It's held by an investment company, and when they get the right builder for it, right now, it could not move forward. But I would, again, suggest to the board, because of the investment made already in the property, not just the land, but putting stuff on the land to develop it, I would encourage this board to take a look. When we get you a list of those subdivisions, you need to take a look and say, if it's 75% built out, we may consider it, but if they hadn't flipped dirt, they're gonna have to go back and start again.
That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I got Commissioner Sanders, but one, I didn't see you, sir. Let me get Commissioner Sanders and then I come to you. But before we go to Commissioner Sanders, you don't want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Yes, sir.
For the subdivision that's already plotted and they got the approval and everything, but it's been sitting for forever, and there's several throughout the county like that. Before they actually start building and they make changes and build a different model, that has to come back before the board for approval, right?
Not for a residential home. Only if they were adding more lots. If they were changing the layout or wanting more density, that's the only thing the board has the right at this time to guide. And while we do have the right to guide some structure, home requirements, there is House bills still going through that is going to prevent local governments from saying, you must use this material or you must use that. That's where we hope to get good builders and strong HOAs that will set those kind of standards. And the way we get that is that if our land sells for the going price or the lowest price, if our land sells for that, then someone can come in and develop and they know what they're going to get per lot. But if we start saying, no, you're not getting 3 lots an acre, or you must put alleys in, or you must do this, that drives the cost of this part of it up, which means then that lot is more valuable, and you can't just get a builder that's going to come in way down here, because they've got to be able to take the cost that it took to create that lot and roll that into the product that they're going to end up giving you.
Okay. Well, let me ask one more question. So, and if we can't talk about it out here, then I understand. So why did they have to come back before us in executive session on Bailey Glen when they changed it? Style of the house.
Okay, so what they were looking for was they did not want to build recessed garages. It wasn't that they just weren't willing to not do a side entry. They said, in the overlay, we say, if your garage faces the front, if you're a front facing, if you're a side entry, it doesn't apply. But if you face the front, your garage cannot be further out than the home is. Like, it couldn't be a snout house. Some of y'all may know those long garages that are the first thing you see when you're coming down the road. And part of that is Americans have stuffitis, and most of us do not use our garages for anything but to store our stuff. And then the garage door's left open, and you go down the road, and you get to see all the fun and crazy, and people don't like that. So there was a regulation that said you had to be recessed behind the plane of the home. So their models didn't fit that. So they applied for a special exception. They were denied. They appealed that special exception on to you guys. They went before the planning commission. Planning commission said nope. They appealed it on before you guys, and you guys, I think, were considering no, and then we were legally challenged. And once we become legally challenged, and it's a potential lawsuit or a real lawsuit, that's what you have the right to go into executive session and discuss, do these homes that they're presenting, is what they're presenting of so detriment that we see we would rather fight it, or is this something we can reasonably arbitrate here and not have to further go into other legal battles?
I got you. So it didn't fit the overlay. I
Yes,
got
sir.
you. So, okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Commissioner Sanders.
I was listening to you about the fire codes that you said about a certain amount of homes. Can you explain to me, and you already probably know what subdivision I'm about to mention, how did the Enclave get approved with almost 800 homes and one entrance?
That was back before, well, the Enclave was originally approved with 2 entrances and some special fire lanes. But at some point during the 2000 or something, the HOA from the Enclave appealed to the Board of Commissioners and asked them to abandon one of the primary entrances that goes up by the apartments that are there. They asked for that to be abandoned, and they went to Rockdale and asked for it to be abandoned because they were getting a lot of traffic and some just potential crime things that they felt that was coming through that rather than down through the main. So the county there was no objections. The Board of Commissioners did agree to abandon that right-of-way. But it still exists for emergency purposes, and then there's that other entrance that's down near the reserves that goes out to the karate and the skate rink. Yes, ma'am. And that is another emergency entrance, but going back to your immediate question, our regulations were much different in the 90s when this began than what they are today as well.
So what about for the new phases? They're building an additional 125 more homes.
Well, that was already platted, so again, it's a builder. It's not a developer coming in and doing raw land. It's a builder, and those lots, somebody already owned those lots, and they were sitting there buildable ready, for lack of a better way of they have the right to build lots that have already been platted.
Okay, so they were approved for 2 entrances, and the board in 2008 abandoned it, and they closed the second entrance.
I don't remember exactly the year, but I can go and look that up
Okay.
because I did
Okay.
pull that information when there was a lot of questions coming back and forth with the road network and emergency entrances. Yes, ma'am.
Because the issue now is about safety now, because some of the citizens in the back are being abandoned, or they're getting stuck back there because of the building, or if there's events, they can't get out of their homes or get to their homes. So we have to, I know we're not there yet, but we need to work on getting that second entrance open, Commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Cowan.
Thank you. I don't really have a question. I just have a comment to expedite things down the road. But when you get ready, you know this better than anybody and what needs to be cleaned up and everything. You and Shayna both. Would it be possible just to give us an executive summary of what your recommendations, the code, and like a while ago you mentioned that all the residential zones probably need to be combined into one.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Just
sir.
summarize all that out so that when we are presented with it,
You're
We
not
could-
looking at 800 pages?
Thank you. Yeah, we can go through and just,
The Cliff Notes.
yeah, I want the cliff notes, vote on it, then we'll give it to the county attorney to do the changes as we need to. So it's just something to expedite.
Absolutely, and that would be the goal. If I can, at the end of tonight, and I promise you we'll pick up the pace, because there's not a lot more meat to discuss. We're getting down to the end of it where it's questions I need to, once you give me some direction this evening, I will be able to further go out and do those changes. But right now with, you know, I may have a good conversation with one commissioner and I'm like, okay, this is what I think we want. And then somebody else may say, well, this is what I'm thinking. So, you know, I need you guys to tell us what you expect, you know, as we move forward. And then staff will certainly, you know, one thing is, we talked about building materials. Well, right now we have a run on what people are wanting to do. They're calling them barn dominiums, but really they're just, some of them are no more than a metal building with converted into heated space. And while some of them can be very nice, if you're in a platted subdivision, would you necessarily want, if your home was designed in one way, would you necessarily want your neighbor to be able to just put up a Butler building and put some plumbing in it? And so there's a lot of concerns, and I will give you the cliff notes of them. So the next few slides are just showing you guys lots. This is a map, and they did it in a color coded so we can kind of see. These are the entire county that are 50-acre lots or greater. So it kind of gives you an idea of where some of our big chunks of land are. And when we say vacant, that means that there's not some type of structure or house. Now, some people may own a big farm and have a house, but still might sell it. So this is not all inclusive, but I think it kind of pushes us in the right direction. And then the next map that we have is broken down by commissioner districts. We have shown you a map of your 20-plus acre lots. This is District 1's. You can see where there's at least lots of 20 acres or better. This is District 2's, where you can see there's identified lots of at least 20 acres or better. District 3, where we have available potentially lots to develop. District 4. And I was really surprised on this one because of so much land that actually falls within the city's limits, but there was a good bit of available land in District 4, and I think that kind of surprised me. And then District 5 here shows where there is available land. Now, not all of this land may be scheduled for residential development. Some of it may be commercially zoned or planned for future industrial, but at least you kind of have an idea broken down into your district where these large pieces of land that do not show a structure. So what's next? It's all up to you. We're under a current moratorium that's going to expire at this upcoming, and it's supposed to be 9/21. I don't know why I keep putting 17 down there. I think last month's meeting fell on the 17th, but it will expire at this upcoming Tuesday. Staff has advertised to extend the moratorium, and I was very gracious on this moratorium if we chose to, for another 4 months until the January 18th, 2022 meeting, while we finalize the direction and decisions the board wants and have other work sessions if necessary. And again, it's going to be on this upcoming agenda. It either will expire and we go back to what we currently have, or we extend it and we put this next plan of action into place. Here's some options. Considering we are months away from our comprehensive plan update to begin in January 2022, and considering it is required to be completed, reviewed, and approved by June 30th, 2023, To keep us in line, again, with our qualified local government status, staff suggests the Board of Commissioners consider placing another moratorium for residential developments for lots that are less than a certain amount of acreage. Now, this would be in January when the other moratorium, or if we chose to move forward. But what we would be saying is, if we wouldn't be stopping all residential growth. But if you said, if you want to develop at 2 acres a lot, you can go ahead and submit your plans. That if you're wanting to develop smaller than that in these areas where we really can't handle that. And I would find it interesting to find a developer that would want to go into an area that has sewer and water and do a 2-acre lot. But it would get what you are suggesting, people to be able to have those larger. Now, I'm not saying we would keep it at 2 acres, but I think that it would be smart for us to adopt a moratorium that wouldn't prevent all development. We'll make changes that we need to help guide what we will allow, but while we're doing our comp plan to see, is 3 acres still a good number? Is 20 apartment units per acre still a good number for us? And if they are, once we complete our planning process, we can remove that moratorium. And when I was talking with Mr. Fricky earlier, he said that that moratorium could potentially be for 2 years, up to 2 years. It can't be indefinite because people do have the right to develop, but we have the right. We have a valid planning session coming up hard. We're going to be going out to all districts. We have a valid planning session coming up that's going to be really hard as we look at our comprehensive plan. But I think that this is potentially a way for us. Yes, sir.
So, Judy, let me ask a very important question.
Yes, sir.
This 2-acre minimum, would that be for inside the overlay as well?
It would be for all land, any residential development. Correct. Any residential development. And that way it would not prevent someone the right to develop, but it would certainly help us address the density issues that we have right now.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Yeah, he got you. Commissioner Henderson.
Okay. Yeah, just want to ask, so if the board agrees to go set one house per 2 acres, that would affect all the districts?
It would be across the board, except if you're zoned A, remember you gotta have 10 acres. So we're not messing with the ag, they can't get 2 acres a lot anyway. They have to have 10 acres a lot. But it would take any other residential district and make everybody be required to do 2-acre lot sizes.
Okay, it was just my comment
Yes, sir.
that, I think, for as I'm concerned, thinking about right now, I would like to have some meetings and kind of explain to them that the board could vote on it and it'd be 1 house per 2 acres, but it may not be necessary what the people's in District 4 may want.
Well, so there, again, let's go back to the fair housing. So if someone came in and they stated that they had a plan and this was to help some type of person who met that need, whether it be age or if it was some type of protected ADA, then there would be a path for them to be able to petition the board because they have a protected status. So just recognize that there would be options for that. There would also, and my suggestion this evening is not that we keep 2 acres forever, but I certainly think we need to put something in place while we are visiting our infrastructure network. Where do we have fire departments? Where have schools been planned? Do we have enough police protection to be able to cover? And so my suggestion would be the moratorium would read that if you want to develop less than this amount, if you wanted to develop 1.99 acres or less, then you would be under this moratorium and you would not be able to move forward until after we complete the entire planning process. And then we can revisit what do those numbers need to look like.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to say this last question, Mr. Chairman. Most of the people who own property have owned their property for years and years. And I just, myself personally, don't feel good about telling them, so, well, you can't develop your property, you can't sell your property for the best and highest use for its cash or whatever. And I understand, but I think one size doesn't fit all.
And that's a very valid point, and I think that's why I am suggesting we do it as a temporary number, which would allow some development to start, but it would allow this board to do more of its planning exercise to see. Now, in saying that, if you have properties that are on the fray of another municipality, they would have the right to seek annexation. So that is something that you need to be aware of. You know, there is the potential for the city of Covington to grow. There's the potential for Porterdale to grow further. There's the potential for Oxford or Social Circle. That is something, Mansfield or Newbern. So you have to weigh that. But again, this is, and I think the goal would be to have everything completed before next November, so it would be ready and sitting there to go into the codification. So I don't think we're looking at this being a permanent action, but I do think that we're looking at, I do think this is a potential. Now, if y'all want to say you want to do it 1 acres, then that, you know, we're not setting that tonight. We will work toward what those numbers, and I agree with you, Commissioner Henderson, in the fact that I think we need to have those hard conversations and open it up so property owners, developers, and builders have some type of seat at the table to discuss with you what are you planning on giving us? Or are you planning on giving us? You know, we're looking for quality development. We have a lot of really good businesses here now that can attract a lot of really great new property owners. And we need to, if we're always shooting for here, we're never going to get to here. So, that's just, I'm not trying to talk you into it, because I do think we need to have those hard conversations. I don't think you can do this without having more public hearings. Because I just think then we would be fighting one potential, you've messed up my rights after another. But if we open the door and we give enough meetings and give them enough time to come in and champion why they think they're different or why they think they have a right to develop, then I think that you're being considerate and fair in doing so.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Mason and then Commissioner Sanders. But Judah, also, I think we need to, to this board, I didn't see, you didn't raise your hand. I got you now, I got you. But to this board, I think we need to do a work session on annexation.
Yes.
Because,
yes.
you know, it's, when we talk about doing this, everybody need to know how it's gonna be affected, I mean, we really do. So, guys, we really need to put that on the agenda to do a work session on annexation and de-annexation. But Commissioner Mason and then Commissioner Sanders, I got you coming. Commissioner Cal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was gonna allude to that. I think this work session today is the beginning of what we need to continue because of annexation and how that could potentially impact Newton County as a whole. Because if we don't have a strategy in place, if we don't have a comprehensive plan in place to know what we're gonna do with all of the land within Newton County, that does leave the door open for things such as annexation. And so I think this is very important, so I'm glad Mr. Chairman brought that up, because that is definitely what we need to do. I was gonna ask too, in addition to that, we had talked about a 2-acre minimum. Do we know if having 2-acre minimums in place, does that deter developers or deter builders from wanting to come? And if so, is that what we want?
Well, and again, I think that is something during the planning process we need to decide. I think that right now we're residential heavy and commercial or business side less. Right now we have a lot of bedroom community. So I don't know that it would prevent people from developing, but again, it is going to drive up the cost just because of the amount of land, the amount that it's going to take to put a road network that stretches these lots rather than condensing it and having a small little area. It's more money to put in the water to extend to these areas. So I definitely think it will stunt the development for a little while, but I don't think it's going to prevent it.
Correct.
And I don't necessarily, again, believe that should be our end goal.
Okay.
Our end goal should be looking at what reasonably works for us and in what areas that reasonably works.
That was my question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders.
Judy, my concern was, and I'm glad you mentioned this 2-acre minimum, because it will help. I know District 3, it definitely would help and stop some of the growth, because we don't have the infrastructure to hold a lot of these homes. Salem Road, Brown Bridge, Qual Road, and all the building that we have coming now, over 2,000 to 3,000 homes that are coming more in District 3
Yes.
alone just this year. So we don't have the road system to house all these individuals, to say it may be 3 or 4 people in one home. So that's thousands of people that's coming into one area. So this 2-acre minimum will help slow down the process in a district that's growing. As you know, a developer just came to me recently, want to put 192 more homes on Fairview Road. Fairview Road cannot house that. So this would help that process, and they want to do about 3 or 4 homes on an acre. It's not gonna, it won't help, it'll help slow down the process. So I hope that we do consider that, because it will help those areas that need to slow down until the state can come in and fix these roads.
Yes, ma'am. And Chairman, if I may, before you go to the next comment or question, and you're exactly right. I want to also remind this board that over the next 2 years, Salem Road will be widening. So we're going to be going through growing pains. Starting this Monday, I believe they shut down the access road here, where the bridge is going to be out for 9 months. Then we also have, which I'm not sure exactly when its timeline starts, but we have all of that Kroll Road realignment. So a lot of these are areas that service our current community. And again, not bringing up my great little city of Porterdale, but anybody will remember before that red light got put in at 81 and Kroll Road, it was a nightmare to try to get through there. Now, you would have thought everybody was happy when construction happened. Guess what? They were not. They were angry, they were mad, they were put out, they had to go other roads. But as soon as the red light was finished and the development was finished, so I want to remind everybody, we're about to go through some major growing pains. And while the end result is going to give us a better desired road network and product, while it's going on, don't think our constituents, your constituents, the county's constituents, are going to be happy. They're going to be frustrated until the development is completed. And that is even one more reason to consider doing this while we're in our comprehensive planning. All of the timeline just kind of works together right here.
Thank you. Commissioner Cowan and then Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Judy, I guess what I'm hearing is we need the time, we need the break. We need to slow it down a little bit to get our feet up under,
Yes.
but we can't cut off all development. And if we go to a 2-acre minimum, that's going to slow growth in districts 2 and 3, which I don't even, no offense to anybody, but I hate the traffic out there, so I try to stay away. But it would, you know, District 5 and I think District 1 have got 2-acre minimum lots available. And I've noticed in the area that I live, more and more developments happening on those 2-acre lots. So people are building them there. They're still building homes. So it won't cut it off, but it may help in the areas that need some help. So I'm not a proponent of stopping development. I am a proponent for high quality development, but we need a break. We need some breathing room. And I was telling the chairman earlier today, we've done over 100 more closings this year than we did last year, right at this same time, in selling properties. That's a lot of real estate. And I'm tired.
Well, and moreover to that point, while it may give us a small reprieve or a little fewer new projects, we still have all of these projects. The Westfield development that's coming in. You have the rest of the townhomes that are going to be put in at Kirkland and Jack Neely. We have Westminster's going to be, so there are still a lot of available lots. It also helps us fill in these other areas. If a builder's looking for a lot, they're going to start looking at so it helps us get our subdivisions fleshed out before we just add new shiny new toys onto it.
Just a quick question. This will not affect any commercial
No,
development.
this is for residential.
If somebody if they need a 0.9 acres for a Taco Bell or whatever, and they want to build it in Salem Road area, it won't affect that.
No, what
Okay.
I am proposing is strictly geared for residential.
Okay.
Now, if the board wants to further explore, that's up to you, but to be quite honest, I think the more we grow our commercial and industrial base, that is what helps our overall budget and tax records, and it doesn't put a drain on the services like the residential needs do.
Let me follow up.
Residential.
How long do you need the moratorium extended?
Well, this upcoming Tuesday, we would ask that you extend this current moratorium to potentially the January 18th, 2022. During that time, there will be other amendments coming that's going to help us. We'll look further into if you're doing a second phase, can we require that left turn lane, you know, those kind of things. So there will be amendments, but then in January, I would propose us releasing the total hold and going toward that minimum lot size and having that with the goal to have it completed before September, because if we don't have a goal of September, then we're not going to get it wrapped up in October to get into the codification in November. So that would be what I would suggest.
What's going to be your recommendation to the board for lot sizes? Is it going to be the 2 acres or the 1 acre?
Well, I think
It's gonna be
2 acres keeps it in line with any watershed. I think it makes it fair across the board for all districts, is what I think.
Okay. Commissioner Henderson.
But you make those decisions, not me.
You're absolutely right. How long might it take, I guess, for the, once the 2 acre minimum, how long are we gonna be at, I guess it did, how long would it take to get this?
To get it completed,
Yes.
possibly no more than 9 months. 9 months is
After
what we
9
would.
months.
By next September, we would need to have true decisions made. But that also means there needs to be a commitment from this board for us to hold those work sessions, for us to talk to those. I mean, it's going to be some time commitment because we have to have public hearings, you know, as we go through. And you may find out, we may all, but you may find out things that you didn't realize we could get if we just knew how to put them in place and ask for it.
Well, I think this is definitely important. I think the board will commit to doing work sessions on this topic. Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I just would like, if we're gonna do work session, let's go into the different districts.
Oh,
And
yeah,
have-
absolutely, yes,
And
sir.
have those,
Yeah.
I mean, that type of
Yeah.
conversation.
Kind of like we did with the strategic plan.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're required to
Yeah.
do that with the
Yeah.
comprehensive plan. We have to go into each district and we have to hold X amount of meetings. You have to hold them in the daytime for those people that might work at night, and you have to hold some in the evenings. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be there at every one. You certainly can, but staff would be required to go out and gather this information, and we would have maps up, and we would have different, you know, we might do surveys where people can fill out and turn in what are they looking for, you know. So, yes, sir, that is part of the comp plan, and we have to show where we have met in each district a certain number of times.
Ma'am, suppose one person had just 1 acre. So what, I mean, if this was, so what would they do with the acre? Just hold on to it and say, well, I'm gonna wait 10 or 12 years down the line, 25 years, as long as it takes until it comes back to where I can build something on my property, or I can sell it.
Yes, sir. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, you know, we had land that was zoned for apartments that sat there since the 80s, and they just couldn't find, and that was already zoned to build. And we have lots of people who hold on to land. We're just at a turning point in our county where a lot of our old farmsteads, those families are passing away, and their younger generation maybe moved away and don't have a real desire. And so a lot of the, as you could see in that first 1971 zoning map, all that was ag, except for a handful of houses. And now you can see it's all developed. In rounding up, and I keep turning my pages without doing this, in rounding up, and then we can either briefly go over the amendments that is coming on Tuesday, or y'all can read them and shoot me any questions that you have, because I don't even know what time it is. It's behind me, but it's 7:39. Okay, well, it's in front of me too. The next few
We got one more
questions.
question.
Yes,
One
sir.
more question. Commissioner Henderson.
Sorry, you know, recently we had on the agenda that I guess the board members couldn't talk to the supervisor concerning. And so I guess where we at there, Mr. Chairman, or Lord, because, you know, you have to, sometime I think the district commissioners have to interact with the supervisor, find out what's going on. I don't think we could go to Lord, the county manager, and ask him a question that we might want to ask him. So we haven't made a decision on that, so I'm kind of asking where we at now.
I'm sorry.
If I may,
I guess,
Yeah, go ahead.
Chairman, because I
Go
did
ahead.
understand him. Lloyd and I had a really good conversation specifically about the job duties that I do, and my job duties require interaction with the Board of Commissioners. So I'm certainly not speaking in the place of the chairman or the county manager, but I think it's recognized that sometimes I reach out directly to you because we've got things coming up, and I need to get that feedback from you. So the county manager did not lead me to believe that I couldn't have active conversations with you, or that you could not have active conversations with me, to my knowledge.
Go ahead, Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, there's no issue with conversation. The only issue I have is where if there's direction being given, but obviously on things like this, there's a lot of explanation that has to be done, and there's a lot of questions that have to be asked. So obviously that's not a problem. Thanks, Judy. And I did want to mention something. I think Commissioner Mason asked the question about whether or not this would deter any home builders from coming to the county. I think what you would have would be a change in the home builders that would be active in the county. Right now, we have a lot of regional and national tract builders who come in, and they're used to building on production, where they'll build 500 or 600 homes at a time, and they're very active. They've got a business plan, and they've got a set of standard building plans that they use, and prototypes that they use, and whether they build it here or whether they build it in Timbuktu or Tucumcari, Arizona, it doesn't matter. They're going to build the same thing. What this will more than likely spur will be a renewed interest by custom builders in the county, because you've got to have, typically it used to be, and I'm not sure what it is today, but it used to be that at least 20% of the cost of your total home, the total cost of the home was in the price of the lot. So if you look at it, if you buy a $500,000 home, 20% of that, or $100,000, is going to be in the cost of the lot. So with that in mind, that pretty well dictates what your home, the price points are going to be. So obviously, you're going to have a higher price point on your homes, which means you would have, typically you would have a higher quality home that is going to be marketed to a higher income buyer, and those are going to be people who typically more professional people who are going to be moving, who would be coming here to the county and bringing maybe higher levels of expertise and professional backgrounds and things that would help to boost our county, and I think that would be, I think that would be very, very positive. Obviously, as Judy said, there could be exceptions, and there could be some exceptions made for certain certain groups, but I think if you look at our housing stock now, we do have quite a bit of affordable housing. We do have quite a bit of housing for the aged. We've got housing for active seniors. We've got just regular senior housing. We've got housing that is being developed now and has been developed that is subsidized housing. So there's a lot that's already there, but this would really give us an opportunity to improve our housing stock. And with all of the new industry that is coming and is set to come, those executives that are in those industries that have complained about not having appropriate housing, and they're moving to Morgan County, or they're going to Greene County or Walton County, well, we'll have an opportunity to have them stay right here. And I think that's just really going to help us out. So, and give us time to really do this correctly and get those issues addressed while at the same time coming up with a really good, solid plan to address the infrastructure, to address those growing pains that we have, and being able to work in conjunction with the other agencies that we need to work with, which is water and sewer and school system and so on. So.
Commissioner Henderson.
I just want to just clarify something. It wasn't about the track builders that I was referring to. It was about the regular person who lives in Newton County, who may not have but 2 acres. And they may want to say, well, I want to build a house or sell this acre lot to my son or my daughter. And if I'm not mistaken, help me, on this, it would not work. It wouldn't work that way. It would have to be a 2-acre minimum.
If it's an existing lot that's already existing and it can be built on, it's not about being able to build a single house. It's about not letting new large tracts of land subdivide out into these little small tracts. So if someone owned a lot right now that was half an acre, and they could pull everything they needed for their building permit, they could get a building permit, or they could sell that lot and someone else could build on it. But what we're trying to guide right now is someone who has 60 acres on Fairview Road that wants to put in 192 houses. That's a big deal when all of it would come back out.
And you're totally right. But if we pass it, the 2-acre minimum, and somebody wanted to build one house on an acre, I'm not talking about the tract builder, I'm talking about the regular person, could they build it?
Yeah, if it's an existing lot,
Well,
yes, sir.
Say if it was an existing lot.
All right, so
Do this. Can you explain existing lot?
Okay, an existing lot means, like where my house is now, I have .19 acres. If there was not a house on it, then I would have the right to develop that. But let's say that I owned 3 acres and I wanted to give an acre to my child to develop, okay? We could look at putting a caveat in for family conveyance lots, because we already addressed those, which wouldn't harm the average person who may, now their children are old enough and they want to build their own house. So there is a way for us to look into that. But let's say that I own 3 acres and I just wanted to sell an acre off because I wanted to buy me a Winnebago. It would prevent me from being able to carve that new lot off if it wasn't for like a family member. So we could definitely put the family conveyance. I think that's a very smart question, and I think we want our current families to be able to grow and live here and continue.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't let someone with a larger tract just break it up and sell it for new building lots, because building is so hot right now and they can get more money for the, for the price of land.
That's good. Commissioner Sanders.
Judy, this might be for another discussion, probably not tonight, but can we do a workshop on existing builders who are coming to existing subdivisions, guidelines when they have families that are already there and they're inconveniencing the families? Because I know you guys received a lot of calls from subdivisions in my area where they're being inconvenienced. So if there's something that can be set in place to give to these builders who are going into these subdivisions and building phases 2 and 3 that are inconveniencing those that are currently living there.
Yes, ma'am. I've learned a lot through 2 subdivisions that have built out. One is Orchard Park, which is in District 4. There was a lot of growing pains there. And then the other one is certainly the reserves. And I do think there are a handful of things. Primarily, the keeping of the peace is for our sheriff's department, but I do believe there are certainly things that we could put in place that could be a little stricter on our builders. Yes, ma'am. And I know that it's running over, and I don't want to necessarily go through all of the pages of the amendments. The only thing I would ask to do a brief discussion on is we presented to the Planning Commission a request in the amendments, and Commissioner Henderson, you had touched on this, so this is why I want to bring it up. Staff's proposal, again for the time being, would be to eliminate the ability to have what would be a truck stop, not a travel center. A travel center is like Buc-ee's, and I don't know if y'all have traveled much or been able to go to a Buc-ee's, but a Buc-ee's is called a travel center because it's geared to the regular vehicular travel. It's not geared to overnight parking or some of the other things that come down to a truck stop. So staff had proposed in the amendments to eliminate truck stops altogether, the same way Rockdale, actually adopting the code that was adopted in Rockdale County. Now, I know that there were some, specifically Commissioner Henderson, you had mentioned that you had some concerns about just saying no, and that perhaps it might be better just to prevent them in the overlays. And right now, they aren't allowed in Salem or Alman, but they are allowed in the brick store. So I need some direction this evening if, again, staff's suggestion would be to adopt what Rockdale County did, just to prohibit them, maybe as we're going through our planning session, so we can look at areas of where one might actually fit in here, because we have very few interstate exits that's unincorporated. We have up on Almond Road, there's some land on the north side, about 11 acres, but I don't know that that would be the appropriate area. I don't believe that the brick store, because if we're trying to create this college town, and you know, I didn't believe it was appropriate there. And I just don't know, most of our other exits where you get off is in the city limits. So again, I would propose to adopt what Rockdale County did, that would just eliminate what we consider truck stop, overnight parking, pumps geared toward these large commercials, y'all, and it's hot. It is hot in here. I apologize, everybody's fanning. But if y'all could just give me a little direction on how you want to go with that, because these are coming in front of you next week. They're all printed here. You can read through them. The rest of them I don't think you're going to have real concern over, but I do want to make sure that we get how we want to proceed currently with truck stops resolved this evening, so it doesn't turn into a hot meeting next week. So if I could get some feedback in regards to just that particular request.
Commissioner Edwards already raised his hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Judy, I'm a proponent of doing as Rockdale did. I know the board members, Commissioner Henderson, may have some reservations about that, and I understand that. But at a minimum, I would ask the board support. At a minimum, I would ask the board support me in eliminating those from the brick store overlay. I would like to get that done for those constituents anyway. So I would just consider what staff has recommended, but I understand we have some reservations about that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm. And Judy, again, it's already done in the Almond and the Salem, right?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. It never appeared on their use table, and when we drafted the brick store, it didn't necessarily have a use table. It just kind of pointed back to the base table. So again, it is allowed in that overlay, and I can't imagine an area in that overlay, if we envision becoming this nice college town, a little Athens, or, and all of the good development that will go there at the college, I just don't envision that to be a appropriate use for that area. Travel center, yes. Truck stop, no.
Commissioner Sanders.
I just had a quick question. So the reason why it wasn't put in the Allen and Salem, is it because of the spacing? I just want to know which their
No,
initial
ma'am,
thought was.
those were done in 2010 and 2013. And other than Chamisa Business Park and the areas that we have right there that border Rockdale County that has some industrial zoning, there just wasn't enough of the heavy commercial zoning probably to have looked, and Salem Road probably would not have been appropriate because most of these look to go at the interstate.
Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to just say this, and you know, and I've heard, and there's been some very, you know, valid concerns. But you know, government has been taking over. I think this entire county. It's telling us what we can do, what we can't do on our property, what we can build, and how, you know. So I'm just, I mean, what does it stop? I mean, what happened to the people? I mean, maybe we had a big meeting and everybody came in and said, well, yeah, we don't want this, or yeah, we want this. I can understand that. But to take it and put over the whole county, you know, and I tell you what may be good for my friend district may not be good for District 4. Maybe what's good for District 5 may not be good for District 4. What may be good for District 1 may not be good for District 4. So I think, once again, this government just saying, well, hey, you're going to have to do this. And we're going to put everybody in it. And I don't think this way that our government is intended to be.
So if I'm understanding Commissioner Henderson, you would prefer us to allow the use in the regular table, not to take it out completely, but would you still consider passing it if we change it to just removing it from the brick store overlay? So, okay. And I think that for now, that's an agreeable solution. So I will make those modifications and changes. These will be coming out tomorrow, probably tomorrow. We'll get that shored up pretty quickly because you're supposed to be considering this next Tuesday evening.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Sanders.
I just have a quick question for another workshop, not tonight, so we'll have to go on. Is there a way that we can build a relationship with Rockdale County Planning and Zoning? Because it affects my district. Because anytime they build, it's like the gas station that's on Fairview now, the Shell station. Anytime they build, I get calls, people thinking it's in District 3, but it's really Rockdale. So we don't know these things that are coming, like they're building more homes. That's all on the borderline of District 3, which is affecting the traffic and so much more. So is there a way that both planning and zoning can build a relationship so we can inform the citizens of what's coming from Rockdale that can affect Newton?
Absolutely, and we
Okay.
can also request that, you know, while I thoroughly believe we have lots of great relationships with our neighboring communities, but we can also just ask for them to periodically give us lists of new projects that have come in. Yes, ma'am.
You have anything, Commissioner Cowell? Okay. You have anything, Commissioner Mason? You have anything, Commissioner Edwards?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my final comments will center around the whole presentation, Judy, and thank you for doing this. I believe this was much needed. It's been a wealth of, it's been a lot of knowledge unloaded on me today, tonight, that's for sure. So as I look back through some of these pages and I see what's allowable now, and I see we want to, the staff recommendation is to consolidate R1, 2, and 3.
Yes, sir.
I'll hold my preference on what that minimum acreage should be in all three of those, by the way, but I look across what's going on in the city of Covington in terms of multifamily. And somebody was trying to do the math the other day, and I tried to keep up. I'm not so sure I did, but if you look at what the city of Covington has in multifamily development right now, you're talking about, from what I understand, 5,000 to 6,000 more cars in a 3-mile radius on a daily basis. Now, I know we approved something in Commissioner Henderson's district, multifamily, a couple of months back, and I believe that was needed for the studio type residents out that way. That is the only reason that I went with that. It made common sense. But I would strongly urge this board to consider the elimination of multifamily in our county altogether. And then lastly, let me say, it's state lots, and I won't say a minimum lot size, but there's a gentleman in my district that sold estate lots over the last year and a half, and if he'd have had 1,000 of them, he could have sold them, 5 to 10 acres. He could have sold every one of them. So there is a demand for estate type lots. No matter what you hear about the millennials, the millennials create a certain demand, I'm sure. And as I look around, there's a lot of millennial houses being built, what I consider millennial houses. But this board right now has a chance to take charge of common sense development, or encourage common sense development in our county. With a lot of the things Judy has talked about tonight, I would ask each of you, just like I'm going to do, I'm going to take this home and I'm going to look at it, I'm going to try to digest it and form an opinion, and knowing what staff's recommendations are, and form an opinion, and then I guess we'll all dice it out or chop it up at some time and talk about it, and I guess we're talking about extending moratoriums and what have you. But I would encourage each of you to digest this even more, and think about things. And our infrastructure, I heard I gotta be careful. I heard a quote in the paper not too long ago about a certain development in the county, and infrastructure was mentioned. And in response to the infrastructure question, this particular person responded and said, when has infrastructure ever preceded development? Well, we've done it wrong what we're saying is we've done it wrong in the past. It's okay to continue to do it wrong in the future. I disagree with that. So we have infrastructure issues. We have school issues, big time school issues. We're building another high school now. I'm sure it won't be long. With all the apartments, especially that are going in right now, we'll have to start planning a new high school very soon if they haven't already. So all the infrastructure, the police, I see every single day. I see the. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Lord, you have anything?
No, sir. No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Judy. We greatly appreciate it. You did an excellent job as always. Thank you to and your team
Absolutely,
Yep,
because
and your
I'm
team.
not here without a great
Yeah.
team.
Don't forget about your team. Yeah. And I thank this board for considering smart growth. Whatever we do, we want to make sure we do smart growth here in the county. You had something? Go ahead.
I want to thank everybody for all joining together and praying for my son, John Henderson, who last week he was in a very bad accident, and he was in a coma for 5 days this time. Last time he went for 11 days. And we started calling people and asking to pray for him. I'm pretty sure Ms. Jackie sent you the email and everybody.
Yes, sir, and I have.
And I want just personally thank everybody who prayed for my son. And believe it or not, when they started praying, that boy got up and called me. Wow. So prayer do save people. Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. But again, yeah, thank all of you definitely for considering smart growth. Nothing else, we seek a motion that we adjourn. Been motioned by Commissioner Henderson and second by Commissioner Mason. All in favor? 5-0.
Who's
Stand
going
adjourned.
home to getting some ice? Because I'm
Oh,
so
no, go ahead.
hot, I'm
Go
ready
ahead.
to go get in a tub of ice.
Well, y'all can blame ABM, the air conditioner go off at